Thank you, Grant. It's been extremely interesting. I know a couple of people here, they have questions. I'm just going to ask you about the DNA things. When you were in California, you were going to speak with I think, J.Z. Knight and Bashar, and one person more about getting a test done on their DNAs. Have you been able to do that?
Well, J.Z. Knight did it. That's where I got the idea. J.Z. Knight did it. And what J.Z. Knight did is she had the DNA because she was under a lot of attack that she was a hoaxer and she was doing whatever. And so they did a lot of brain stuff to look at her brain and stuff like that. And the person she channels is this Ramtha. And Ramtha said and this is the idea where consciousness creates the brain, not the other way around. So he said the mind is the DNA. That is, the mind creates the DNA, creates the body. And when you change the person, so this is this idea with channelers. You have relay channelers where, say, Pia, you're channeling, you're still in control. If you're just relaying a message back and forth, but if you suddenly get a spirit that actually takes over your body and your voice changes and everything changes, your mannerism changes, then Pia is sitting in the back seat of the car and this other being is now driving. And what Ramtha said is the DNA will change. So what she did is an experiment. J.Z. Knight, who was the sort of a spiritual advisor to Shirley MacLaine, the actress, they did her DNA when she was normal, and then they did her DNA when she was channeling Ramtha. When she was normal, and this went to 3 different labs, they did 3 different tests. So when she was normal, the DNA showed that she was French. When Ramtha came through, when they did the DNA, when Ramtha was channeling, it showed that she was North American Indian and I think Icelandic. So the DNA completely changed. And that's where I got the idea. And I said, all we have to do is duplicate this experiment. Either J.Z. Knight made this thing up, or we can run this thing again. All we need is a trans channeler, somebody who's able to completely dissociate, completely shut off their conscious mind and let the other being take over. So we started looking for people. Nobody really wanted to do the experiment. And I actually looked even at these multiple personality disorder people, because it's the same thing. There's the claims with multiple personality disorder that the eye color is changing, that the medical conditions are changing, all this kind of stuff. That's DNA changing. It gives the indication that when an alter comes in on a multiple personality, that the DNA is going to be completely different. It's going to be whatever the personality is. So what we tried to do, and I had sort of given up, and then we got an agreement with Bashar, or Darryl Anka, who channels Bashar, to do the test. Now we're sort of at a standstill. The assistant was going to do it, but there's been some sort of stall. I don't know what's going on, but we're going to do it through 2 different labs. And what we're going to do is try to duplicate that experiment where when he's Darryl Anka, when he's normal, it should have 1 DNA. When he channels Bashar, the DNA should change. And if that turns out to be true, the whole world changes, because then you really have to consider the brain really doesn't have anything to do with this at all. It is the mind that is controlling the DNA, the mind's controlling everything. That's this whole idea that you manifest what's around you, the John Wheeler thing. There's no physical event until there's an observer, that it's a participatory universe, that your mind is controlling what's going on, or even the idea that this whole thing's a dream created by your mind, and that when you die, you actually wake up from your dream and you're back in the real world.
John Burroughs spoke on a show you did about his DNA being very special, and even stating that his son didn't have any DNA. Do you think his experience with the Rendlesham case has changed his DNA, or do you think?
Well, no, his DNA will be the same. What I said to John, I told John I was going to do this experiment. He never really got back to me. He said, "Well, I want to know," and I've never really told him. But I did leave him a hint. I said, "John, next time you're getting regressed, have a DNA kit near you." And that it was just a hint to say, when he channels, then that DNA may change, because then the other being is talking through him. So whoever is running the session, who's ever doing the talking, it's their DNA. So you even have a situation where, for example, Pia, you could have a situation where you look at the potential of this. So say if your father has died or your mother's died, if you have some of their DNA, if you can actually get a trans channeler to contact your mother or father, and they're trans channeling your mother or father, the DNA of that channeler should be your father or mother. And if you can confirm that kind of stuff, if you've got your father's DNA or a DNA sample, and it comes through, so John's DNA will be, as long as his consciousness is running the show, as long as he's normal, his DNA will always be the same. What I maintain is that when he starts to channel or dissociates, that's when the DNA will change. If there's another being that comes in and takes over John's body, and that's what happened is supposedly when he was doing that regression, he started this channeling thing, and that's
I understand that, but the test that was done on him, I believe through Hel Puthoff, was it him or
and Nolan, yeah,
David? Yeah. They stated that he had a very, very abnormal
a very
DNA.
unique DNA, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then you have to
And-
look at the idea, Pia, that if it's one life, then it's one world. But if it's multiple lives, so John could have chosen to come in with that DNA. So whatever your DNA is, if it's a multiple life thing and your mind is running the show, so he may have a very unique DNA. I don't know what they meant by that. They didn't sort of define that. Or his son doesn't have anything. The thing is that I maintain that if you keep taking his DNA, it will always be the same. It's only when the trans-channeling thing starts that the DNA should change. That's the big thing, is because what they're saying now is you're a victim of your DNA, Pia. That your
but
DNA.
they did ask him to meditate and do yoga before he had this test done, yes?
No, they asked him to do that all the time, to make contact. And I said to John, I said, did the contact increase after they told you to do this? And he said, yeah, it works. And that's what I'm saying. And so they must know this dissociation, because that's the thing with the University of Pennsylvania, that if you do yoga and meditation together, it shuts down the temporal and parietal lobes, which pops you into the field. And so that's what they were telling him, is to do this meditation thing. So he does one in the morning and does one in the evening. And he says it helps. So this is like they're teaching him a contact modality, which indicates to me they must know these contact modality thing. Why would they tell him to do these two bizarre meditation and yoga thing? It wasn't until I saw the thing from the University of Pennsylvania where they were saying the same thing, that if you do these two things, one's an active and one's a meditative thing, like a stationary thing, one's active. And what they state is when you do them both at the same time, then it overloads the circuit, and this part of the brain shuts down, and you get this samadhi, this oneness experience. So that's where they were telling him. They had done the experiment with him. They just got his DNA. Actually, they got the DNA during his test, like during operation. He had that when he was too close to the UFO, and I maintain he pulled his gun. That was the thing. He pulled his gun when this thing lit up on the field, and then he had this heart injury, and he's doing when they got his heart operation. Kit Green got him a disability, and he had the heart operation. That's when they got the DNA, and it was only when the DNA came back, that's when they said, you have this unique DNA, very unique DNA, and your son doesn't have any traces or whatever. And that's when they told him to do the meditation. And so he does this meditation and this yoga thing, which opens up the channel. That's why I said, does it work? And so it indicates they know something about this. Maybe they've been told this, or they figured this out from experiencers, that this does open up the channel. It's a contact modality that they're teaching them to do.
Okay. I'm just going to comment on something you said about Mary Rodwell. I had a regression with Mary Rodwell, and yes, it was in real time, if you can say that, everything I experienced there, and she did kind of make it possible to ask these questions to the beings I saw in my regression. So she does use that technique.
Yeah, that's kind of unique to me. I didn't understand until Mary was telling me the story, and then suddenly it hit me, because you always hear this story, there's no time and space, the Einstein, with moving the speed of light and the time slows down, all this kind of stuff. And I never really understood the concept. It wasn't until she told me that concept where I'm thinking, whoa, you changed the event. It just sort of occurred. And I've been doing this like for 44 years. I didn't realize this idea that you can actually prove that you can change time. You can go back into a past event and actually change that event. And if you can do it in that, maybe the aliens can actually do it in everything else as well, that there is only here and now. and that we have it's the illusions that are sort of throwing us off. We think there's past, present, and future, and the idea we're getting, it's all one. There's only one now, and that you can change the past and the future. There's even a psychologist. Her name is escaping me. She's got a PhD from Columbia, who actually talked about the fact that she claims that she can actually have a meeting with her past, present, and future lives in a meeting, and have a discussion with all her different lives, all talking with each other. It's just that kind of bizarre stuff. It makes more sense when you hear what happened to you, or what Barbara Lamb told me, where you suddenly realize, oh, she changed the event, where it's not a stationary event chiseled in stone. You can actually go back and ask questions in your event, and talk to the aliens and ask them questions and stuff like that. It's bizarre. I never picked it up until just a couple of months ago.
I'm going to ask a question from Steve, who's here at the moment. And this doesn't have a lot to do with what we're speaking about today, but this is the question for you about how do you feel that Trump, his position on this whole topic, and maybe especially now where the To the Stars Academy has just put a person on their advisory board called Chris Herndon, I believe his name is, and he was the chief information officer at the White House, overseeing the secure communications for the executive branch. What's your take on where Trump is in all of this at the moment?
Okay, I posted a little bit about it because, as I mentioned, one of the top Republican fundraisers, just when he was elected, came to me to help brief him that they didn't think he was going to get told the truth, and they wanted me to tell them all this sort of stuff. And I said, well, I don't know the bodies, I don't know the crafts, I don't know anything. I really can't help you. And he's got to know. I maintain, a lot of people maintain the president doesn't know. I maintain the president has to know what's going on, because, you know, if you're dealing with a foreign power, the head of state has to negotiate. You can't have, some person down low level in the government dealing with aliens. You have to have the head of state, and he's the head of the executive branch. He's the head of intelligence. He's the head of the military. I mean, he has to know what's going on. So I always maintained they knew what was going on. And what I told this guy who wanted to do this briefing thing for him was, well, he's going to hire the CIA. He's going to hire the NSA. He's going to hire all these different people. And if they don't tell him what's going on, well, that's his own problem. I mean, if his own people aren't going to tell him what's going on, because it's the idea that everybody quits in the government, like the Obama government, everybody quits, everybody resigns, and they leave. It's not like there's anybody there to keep the secrets. Trump replaces everybody. And so what I believe has happened with him, he stated in one statement before when he was running, he really wasn't interested in UFOs. He wasn't really interested in outer space. But you now see that he's brought up the whole Space Force thing, where he wants the Space Force. And that kind of scares me a little bit, because I'm always fighting against people in the UFO community who believe that there's evil aliens here and they're going to eat us or do whatever. And I don't believe any evil alien stuff. And so it's the idea that he's seeing as a threat. So it would indicate to me that he was briefed on the thing, and how he's reacted to it is to build a Space Force. That we're going to go to war with these aliens. And I maintain that with John Burroughs, where he pulls his gun, or with all the crashes in the 1950s, where planes were, pilots are being killed for trying to shoot down UFOs, that if you decide you're going to try to go to war with the aliens, you're in a lot of trouble. I mean, that's pretty stupid stuff. To assume that they're evil, that's my fear, is that we're going to try to turn this into, we're going to build this huge Space Force, and we're going to try to kill aliens, and it's just not going to work, because they may be a million years ahead of us, and it's just an attitude problem. And you see this, my fear with To the Stars, the same thing. We're calling it a threat, that we need to fight aliens, that there's these evil aliens that are messing with our DNA, and they're here and they're bad stuff. And I maintain that we have met the enemy, and he is us. We are the enemy. They are not the enemy. We are the ones that are dropping atomic bombs. And I say you know, if you believe in evil aliens, I say the minute they drop an atomic bomb, I'll believe they're evil. Until then, the Americans hold that reputation of killing 100,000+ people with atomic bombs. The aliens, as far as I know, haven't done anything like that. They haven't killed massive numbers of people. I think we're the problem.
Okay, thanks. Perhaps Sim would like to ask the question. I know he has a question for you.
Okay. Go ahead, Sim.
Hi, Mr. Cameron.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah. Are you aware of a contactee called Suzanne Kanzler?
Yes. Yes.
Well,
I had a bizarre, I'll tell you a really weird story with Suzanne Chancellor. Suzanne Chancellor had an experience where she was on board the ship and they showed her a 3D holographic image of a formula. And she said it was so big and it was like 3D holographic. She was able to actually walk around inside this formula. And they told her, they indicated that it was a cure to cancer. And she started to, they said, something you use every day. And she said, well, is it like toothpaste? And they said, well, sort of, but they wouldn't tell her. And then, so she had that experience. And then there's a guy by the name of Brett Oldham. And Brett Oldham had an experience where he encounters the tall grays on board a ship and he's very upset with them. And he says to the tall alien, he says, let me ask you a question. What's your concept of God? And the tall alien says, we are one with the one who is all. And he said he was so profound, he had to sit down. He couldn't believe it. That they talked about this oneness thing, that everything is one, that we are working with the one who is all. And he said at that moment, this 3D holographic image of a formula started to appear coming out of the wall. And they told him, this is the cure to cancer. And he said, well, give me a pen. I got to write this down. And they said, no, you can't. You can't write it down. You got to remember it. He said, I can't remember it. Give me a pen. No, you can't have a pen. You got to remember it. And he was getting all upset. He got so upset that they actually took him out of the room. The thing was that both of them had been shown this giant 3D holographic image of a formula and was told it was a cure to cancer. So I actually offered to put up the money for both of these two people to be regressed. And I was going to bring in Yvonne Smith to do the regression. And I was going for the formula. And I said to Yvonne, if someone sees a formula in their on board the ship, can you reproduce it? She said, that's one of the best things we can do under regression. We can get them to reproduce the formula that they saw. And so I made the agreement. And in the end, they sort of got very sort of worried about other stuff that would come up. And I basically said, well, I don't really care about all the other stuff. I'm going for the formula. I'm paying for this. We're going to regress you and we're going to go straight to the formula. And if you want to ask some other questions, that's fine. I don't really care about anything else. I just want the formula. So it never did come. But you see these weird things where people are shown stuff on board a ship that turns out to be actually helping us. Another example is, if you know Susie Hansen. Susie Hansen and a guy in Canada, it was a band where the entire band was abducted. His name is Steve Boucher, were both shown an instrument that the aliens used, which had placed a green light on the person's arm, and you could actually see the veins in the arm with this light. And then they could change the sort of the intensity of the light. You could see the bones, then you could see the muscles. And they actually used this thing on his stomach to look inside his stomach with this light. Both Susie Hansen and Steve Boucher described exactly the same object, the same thing that was used on them. So you see this kind of stuff on board. So that's my little story about Suzanne Chancellor, about one of these. She told
exactly the same phrase that I was wanting to talk about, because I thought it was Suzanne Chancellor who got that answer. We are all part of one that is all.
Yeah, no, that was Brett Oldham. Brett Oldham. But they both had the same experience of seeing this giant 3D holographic image coming out of the wall.
Yeah. I have another question. Yeah. That producer that you had a guest sometimes, Chris?
Oh yeah, Chris from Hollywood.
Yeah, I saw him. I know now who is Chris Peters. Are you aware of that?
Yes. He's been identified now. Yeah, he's been identified as Chris Peters. Yeah.
That's it. Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Okay, Marcelo has a question for you.
Okay.
Yes, hi Grant.
Hi, Marcelo.
Fantastic lecture. Great lecture.
Thanks.
Beautiful stuff. It's it's quite interesting what you're saying about the yoga done with meditation. I've been doing yoga with meditation for 19 plus years now.
Wow.
And I've been trying to tell people, look, you know, and I teach it in every single class that I teach. Look, here's like something really powerful. And people sometimes get overwhelmed, they get scared. You know, the whole fear thing is quite strong in the programming of basic humanity, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, right. And so I just wanted to know quickly, what happened to Jill Boulter Taylor after she came out of her left brain thing?
Yeah, she had, the left brain was shutting down, and she would talk about the fact that during the event, it's I think it's the second most watched TED Talk of all time. So you can look up Jill Bolte Taylor.
I've seen it, but I'm asking about what happened after 6 weeks.
Well, what happens is
the
left brain started coming back online. So the swelling would go down, the blood clot was taken out, the swelling would go down, and the left brain would start to come back online. And that's when she said, suddenly she said, the voice was back. That there was no voice. She suddenly realized there was suddenly this voice was back in her head, and it was saying you're bad, you're having problems, and the voice is very negative. It's sort of like a very negative sort of thing. And that's when she said to the voice, she said, "Oh, I was very happy without you here." And the fear came back and the stress came back. And then she said, that's when she made this thing. She said to the voice, she said, "Okay, from 9 o'clock in the morning till 9:30 in the morning, and from 9 o'clock at night till 9:30 at night, you can bitch and complain all you want, but the rest of the time you are to be quiet." And she maintains you can actually control the voice in your head. It's just everybody thinks that voice is supposed to be there, but she claims, because she knew the voice wasn't there, that she claims she can control this voice to only speak when she wants it to speak. And another person that claims that is like Deepak Chopra claims, they live in the moment, where there's the voice is not controlling it. And people think that voice is an actual real thing, that it's you talking. And yet when Jill Bolte Taylor talks about it, where it's cut out, you realize that voice doesn't have to be there, and you can actually control it. And that's the whole process, whether it's through meditation or whatever, that you can actually start to control these things that you think are uncontrollable.
Exactly. And that's what the ancient Asian traditions were pointing at. That's the Enlightenment tradition right there. There is the voice in the head is the prison of the mind. Exactly. As Morpheus said to Neo.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And so it seems to me, it seems like all these contact experiences are basically these higher dimensional beings or aliens, with super intelligence or super high technology, super high abilities. They're basically trying to help humanity become more conscious.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We're at that point where we're sort of getting.
Right. And that it seems like humanity is deeply unconscious.
Yeah. In some ways, we're going the opposite way. I mean, we're becoming more separated. It's like America first, me versus you, good guys versus bad guys. And the separation, and that's maybe what the message they're trying to get us is if you believe in separation, you're dead in the water. You are not going anywhere. You're going to destroy the world. You have to understand that we are all like cells in a body, that we have to work together, almost like Deepak Chopra says. You have to realize that the air is your breath. The trees are your lungs. The water is your circulation system. Unless you come to that conclusion and realize you are connected to everything around you, you are going to destroy the world.
Right. And it seems like it all started with scientific materialism, with Newton and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. And because they've created cell phones, that's why they have all the power. And it's sort of like, you and I can talk about this stuff that's very important. And they're going to go, well, you haven't created a cell phone. Everybody's interested in the toys, and you get caught up in the material paradigm and in the toys, and it's like rape, pillage, kill, and steal. Who's ever got the most toys when they die wins. And that's the mentality that everybody's working, because everybody likes the little toys and the cars and stuff like that.
Right. So Grant, Mike, I've got another question about I was at a birthday party 2 weekends ago, and there was a little girl who was attending. She was 11 years old. And I was watching her for the whole 5 or 6 hour event. She was on her phone playing games constantly. She was not there. She was turned into a zombie, right?
Yeah.
So what about 5G as well? What have you heard about 5G? Because it seems like all these things are about turning humanity, human beings who have these incredible quantum computer brains with incredible potential. It's just like those high-level monks who were studied by Richard Davidson. I finished reading that book recently, the Altered Traits book.
Yeah.
You know, but it seems like all these things are to turn people into zombies, and the contact experiences are about the opposite, about waking up. What have you heard with 5G with that?
Well, I think I look at it, you have that problem that people are turning off, but you also have the thing where it's almost like the collective unconscious. Like even in research where you basically, when you tap in, it's like the idea that 40% of all experiencers say the answer to everything was there when they were in the experience and they sort of forgot it. And the benefit to me of this sort of internet thing is that everybody's linking all their material into one common place where you can tap into this material. I think in some ways it's a positive thing, almost like the aliens have given us the internet to understand what collective unconscious is, and that the separation is becoming less because you can't really hide anything and all the answers are there. It's almost like the idea where if you and I want to get our message out, we can get the message out. We have as much power as the New York Times. We just have to get it onto the internet. It's not like in the old days where you had no voice. You can tap into the system, almost like this idea of the Google coming in a dream, where we're sort of given this idea, and our power comes from us working together. Where you have the brain that has a certain capacity that you are able to get to a certain point. But the only way you can advance now as a society is that all the people in the society have to join together to work as one to increase it, because your brain capacity is only so much. But if you put all those brains together on the internet, but it's like anything else, like water, you can use it for good or evil. You can use metal for good or evil. Everything has a component where it's going to go one way or the other. And to me, it always comes down to the idea of separation versus oneness. Anything that's evil to me is the belief in separation. If you believe that you are separate, if your internet tells you that I'm going to use this for good, for getting answers, for putting out a message, whatever, then it's for good. But if you use it for, like kids linking themselves off, then you can use it for bad. Everything can be used either way. Everything in the universe is neutral. There's no good people, bad people. There's no good or bad aliens. There's just souls that are reincarnating. Everything is neutral. Everything is our creation, our manifesting. You can manifest good things in the spirit world and the good in this world, and it's all a matter of creation. The universe to me is neutral.
Okay, and the last question I have is, you mentioned about psychedelics and the heroic doses.
Yeah.
That terminology, I think it's from Terence McKenna.
Yeah.
And is it spreading around the world, the heroic dose thing, because I one time took Iboga, and Iboga, and I think I told you about it, and the whole experience lasted 25 hours, and that was a mega heroic dose. Yeah. It lasted 25 hours. And my wife said she had never seen me without an ego before. And it just crushed the ego. It was like, and it was so powerful, but it's like, that is waking up people around the world as well to the whole control paradigm that's keeping humanity enslaved.
Yeah, and that may be where like Eastern religions, or where religion comes from, is this sort of enlightenment that some guy was walking along and they picked up a mushroom and ate the mushroom and suddenly popped into this other world, and that's where these ideas come from. And because of the Cartesian thing where we separate materialism and spiritual, and the material takes over, we sort of have said that stuff doesn't exist, and that's where more and more when we tap into these things. When I put all the contact modalities and I say, if you have the heroic dose for the psychedelics, you have the experience, you suddenly realize, oh no, I'm on the wrong path. And it'll always come down to experience. You really can't, I think in some ways, can't really convince anybody. It's not until you have a sort of a samadhi experience where you're in that world where you suddenly, it's like me with my UFO experience, where you go like, oh, now I know what's going on. It's like, it's where experience teaches you rather than trying to teach people. And so the more people that do it, and it's a process. If life goes on forever, if things are eternal, it really doesn't matter where you destroy the world. It really doesn't matter what really happens. It comes down to you and I. If reincarnation is a fact, if things are eternal, we came into this world to do something, we're going to leave, we're going to get asked how did it work out, because you planned it, you set up the whole thing, and how did it work out? And it comes down to an individual thing, it's a personal path, and that you have to have empathy for the people on the path who don't know what's going on, and then realize the fact that to whom much is given, much is expected. Knowledge not used is sin. That if you and I have the knowledge and if we don't use it for good, then what good does it, what good is it for a man to gain the whole world and lose his own soul? It's an individual experience that everybody's on their little path, and that you and I, because we have so much more knowledge, are much more responsible for what we know, that nobody's going to cut us a break when we die and say, we're going to say, well, Hillary Clinton and her emails, or Donald Trump, or my mother-in-law, the dog ate my homework, or make all these excuses. They're going to go, no, you knew what it was all about. And it's up to us to take what knowledge we have and to do what we can with that knowledge, and then have empathy for people who don't have the knowledge and who aren't on the path.
Yes. Thank you, Grant.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a question from Christian, so he'll be on in a moment.
Okay.
Hello, Grant.
Hello.
I have a question. There seem to be about 2 billion galaxies discovered right now. And if we are making up things in our minds, how is the universe or the galaxy created by us through looking at the universe? Because when I was into computer gaming and making computer games, we had this in the late 90s, that we created the world when you proceed in the game. So you can have a much bigger game than was made before the character was entered the game.
Yeah. That's the whole concept of us manifesting the world, that we are sort of creating the world that we see, and I think it's 2 trillion galaxies, which is another thing that people don't realize, is that you take a look at people who we say are very smart, like Einstein, Niels Bohr, or Heisenberg, when they were alive, when this famous thing took place, the conference, the Soviet conference, where they came up with this idea where the observer effect and all this kind of stuff, they only believed there was one galaxy. Einstein, all these guys believed there was only one galaxy. And now I think it's 2 trillion galaxies, where it gets bigger and bigger. And if you get to the Eastern idea, it's the idea that it's all one mind, and it's a matter of creation and expression, and that the universe just keeps getting more complex and more and bigger, and that you and I are participatory in that creation, that you can create whatever you want, and you're helping the universe to evolve.
I had another question. When through time, people have seen every sort of crafts, like airships, saucers, red light, like you. Is that a part of the conscious of people, where in the state where the mind is in the period of time, if you know what I mean?
The way I see sightings as part of like a contact modality, that you get to a certain sort of evolution of consciousness, and other consciousness starts to interact with you, or other beings start to interact. I think with the reason that so many different types of crafts is because it really has nothing to do with the craft. It's not like there's 1,000 different ships. I think a lot of it is our seeing what we want to see. That you'll even get 2 people sitting beside each other who see 2 different things. That it's more of a I call it, the theory I used for it was called the theory of wow, that they just want you to go wow. They want you to think and go, what was that object like? And they're making you think like, oh, maybe there's more to the world than the physical world that I'm thinking. And then suddenly they have the crop circle is even more dramatic. It's like, what are they doing with the crop circle? What is the message? Like, who's leaving the message? And all they're trying to do is get you to go, wow. You're going like, wow, what's going on? And none of it means anything. It's all just signaling to you to wake you up, to realize something's going on. And then you tap into the people who are interacting with the phenomena, and that's the way it works. I think a lot of the sighting stuff, because when I saw my second sighting, I still remember looking at it and saying, what are they doing? Because they were just sort of flying along and they didn't seem to be going anywhere or doing anything. And it wasn't until years later I suddenly realized, like, no, they weren't doing anything. They were just there because they wanted me there. They wanted me to see it. And maybe there was no ship there. Maybe it was, I made it like myself, like my friend, where this psychic tells him, no, you sent the ship. I mean, it was you that woke yourself up. And you start to see this interconnectedness of time and space and yourself. And the ships may not be anything. They may be, just something that we create, because it's like the John Lennon one where he has the big light bulbs on the side of the ship. I mean, if you're flying through space, you don't need big light bulbs to fly through interstellar space. I mean, all the lights are different. It's something just to make you, to wake you up, just to realize something's going on. That to me is the whole sighting thing. And that's why, because we don't have lights on our planes except for landing lights, for navigation purposes or, safety stuff. We don't have lights on our ship. Why have they got lights on their ship? They have lights so you can see them. They want you to see the ship. That's the whole idea.
Great. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Then this is Pia again. Then what is the purpose of healing people? Like, these beings, they heal something like 40% of the people in the study, of the free study, I believe you said.
Okay. Okay. That could be part of the thing where it's like a wake up thing where people are being sort of given a message. But one of the things I've read about healing now is that people actually heal themselves, that a healer actually doesn't heal you. The healer just that gets a field. They produce a field where if you tap into the field, it's your belief that actually heals you. And that goes into this Bankston thing, this thing where you see the healer and the person who's being healed go into this synchronistic wave pattern where they both have the same, exact same brain pattern of waves. So and that makes sense to me, that the healer produces a field. And it's your belief, almost like Jesus said, is your faith that has made you whole, or it's your faith that healed you. There's no magical sort of magic going through the air where the healer's making people. You're part of the process in this whole thing. But again, part of it may be the thing where they're just trying to wake people up in terms of allowing people to, like, force them to dissociate. You show them the screen or you do whatever, because these people are being taught how to heal. I mean, they're not natural healers. They're having. But
they're also getting healed themselves from the aliens or the orbs. There are also a lot of cases where they get healed. Yeah.
And Chris Bledsoe talked about that, where he had chronic Crohn's disease. But is it him healing himself? Like, if there's no time and space, if you are a creator, it's almost like reincarnation is a fact. If you come in, for example, they had the thing about 37% of all people who are experiencers had near-death experiences. So you have this traumatic near-death experience, and they're also experiencers that have been on board the ship. And so they wanted to have they wanted to do a sort of a study, like, how can this possibly be? And I say, because you're making the wrong assumption. You're assuming that the person is a random event. It's only one life and it's a random event. So you say, well, how is it possible that somebody could have a random near-death experience and then a random event on board the ship? But if reincarnation is a fact, maybe you chose to have an experience, and maybe you chose to have a near-death experience to learn something. So the whole healing thing is that when you are sick, you look at it the other way in multiple life thing is, why would I allow myself to get sick? Did I plan this before I was born, that I'm going to be sick or I'm going to die as a child or at 20 years old? You hear the Newton stories, Dr. Michael Newton. I always encourage people to read that, The Journey of Souls. And in there, he talks about these people who are gathering together to be a part of like a plane crash or a ship going down or something, where they're all agreeing that they are going to die in this thing. And it's the whole idea that your life is planned for you, and you decide exactly when you're going to come in and when you're going to leave and who your parents are and that sort of thing. So it's not a random thing that you are sick. Maybe you are sick for a reason, and it's a life lesson. and that because you make yourself sick, you can also cure yourself if that's part of what the plan is that you wanted. And that a lot of it becomes a lot less random than we think. We think we're just like corks that are sort of going down a stream, and there's all these things there. Your genetics is messing with you, and aliens are messing with you, and your mother-in-law's making you have a bad attitude or whatever. And in the end, it's an internal thing that you are creating what's around you, and all the stuff that's around you may be stuff that you picked to be around you. You chose the stuff. Almost like people complain about, oh, this is a horrible time or whatever. And I always remind people, whatever you think is bad in the world, just remember, you chose to be here at this time and in this place and in this situation. Maybe you chose to be in this terrible time because you're supposed to do something about it.
Okay, and perhaps the orbs or the aliens are creating this wave pattern so people can heal themselves.
Or the other thing is that John Alexander said, what if it's true that we are them and they are us? What if you are actually the aliens? What if you are actually one? What if you, your life before was one of those beings? You have a lot of people who will say, I don't believe I'm from here. I believe, like John Denver, the 53 million albums, the famous singer in America believed he was from the constellation of Lyra. So you have this whole idea that maybe you are the aliens. And it's this idea of separation. If you realize that you are one with the aliens, then how can you kill aliens? If you believe that you're one with the Mexicans, the Chinese, or the Russians, or everybody in the world, if we're all one, how can you go steal people's stuff? And that's sort of the concepts that we always go back to separation, and we go back to the physical world, and we fall back into these illusions of things that when you look at the brain, they aren't true, that we can prove they're not true, that we're getting illusions of what's actually going on around us and making false assumptions. And that was my download experience, which I will do a book on. It was 24 things that came to me that said, okay, what you got to do is you got to look at the assumptions, and it's like a mathematical equation. Pia, in step number 1, if you add instead of subtracting, you can do all the calculations you want. You are never going to get it right, because in step number 1, you made the wrong step. So you have to assume, you have to say, is it a world made of nuts and bolts? If it is, that's one world. But if it's a world made out of consciousness, everything changes. Is it one life? If it is, that's one world. But if it's multiple worlds, that's a whole different world. If it's a random world, that's one world. But if it's not a random world, if it's a self-organizing world, that's a completely different world. And you have to rethink. So it's all these false assumptions. And I was given 24 things. Is you making this assumption, it's wrong. It's this, it's not that. It's this, it's not that. And it's these kind of things about random world, conscious world, good versus evil. Is there good and evil? Is there time and space? All these we make these false assumptions. And then because we make the false assumptions, we make false conclusions from starting off and adding instead of subtracting. Okay,
that's interesting. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add on to this. Is there anything you want to round up?
No, that's good. I'm going to head off and volunteer now, and I appreciate my time in Denmark. I need to know where my stick is, but other than that, I mean, I really appreciate all you've done for me. And anytime you want to do a presentation, or if you want me to come on with somebody else, I know most of the people in the field, and this is a kind of a good way to do it. I even said that, in some ways you could actually do this, because I used to do my meetings on Zoom as well, where you'd have a meeting once a month. You'd bring in some speaker, and then I would have my speaker in Canada, and then you'd have all these groups around the world, and you could actually have a schedule from around the world where, you see who Denmark's got tonight? They got, Mary Rodwell. Oh, let's go watch their meeting. And you could actually have these meetings, and that's the power of the internet, that we can actually get together around the world, interact with each other, and you could have 1,000 different meetings going every month with researchers and groups around the world, that you could tap in to all this different knowledge that all these people have. And that's the power of the internet, that we're able to interact, and we are actually able to become one. Rather than separate entities, we can get together, we can share ideas. And when we share ideas, that's when the power goes beyond our own little brain, that we get together and we can hopefully save the world from the way it seems to be spiraling into this sort of separation world where it's me versus you and good versus bad and that kind of stuff. So I really appreciate your giving me a chance to interact and to talk again. And I hope we can do it again sometime.
We must do it again. It's been fascinating, and thank you so much for your time and sharing all your knowledge. It's
beautiful. And let me know if you have some other big guest on, and I'll link in to watch you interview somebody else.
Okay, sure, we'll do that.
Thank
you for today, and thank everyone, and catch up with you soon.
Okay, have a good day.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.